and also yes, work on the learning task anyways. But this focuses on, we call it causal pathways. So I will be mentioning causal pathways or theory of change, using it interchangeably in this module, and I will discuss why that is in a bit. By the end of this module, we hope that you will be able to explain to others the importance of theory of change, identify different ways for developing causal pathways, plan and design a successful pathway for your program. And in this module is also where you would understand, yeah, how we use input, activities, outputs, outcome, and impact statements as well. Don't forget, if you have any comments, questions, suggestions, please feel free to put the comments inside your class, inside the classroom, which is this, right? And we'll be happy to yeah, give feedback, suggestions as well, and we'll be able to discuss. That's where we can have a two-way kind of communication. So let's dive into the things. In the next few minutes in this video, I will discuss what causal pathway is. Also trying to look at how we identify program goal and impact statements, or what we call the outcome statements. Then we will define input and activities. We would also be able to look at defining our outputs, which is same as the objective statement, especially in the context of civil society organizations. Then we'll look at the component, what's even included in a theory of change, or what we call causal pathways. Then we'll look at several examples as well, and we can try and construct a theory of change, or what we call a causal pathway for a program as well. So let's dive into things. So it is important to state that yes, many times some people call it the logical framework, intervention logic, outcome hierarchy, result chains, theories of change, program theory. I mean, this is a cloud of it's a cloud of different ways in which people refer to theory of change. Anyways, but think about it as like I said in module 1, it is you just thinking about how and why and under which circumstances your project or your program moves from activities to the change that you expect. So which is the outcome, right? A theory of how and why and under which circumstances this operates. So I mean, Carlos West in 1995 was the person that started, I mean, had this as a starting conversation on what change can really mean. Like people can have theories, and also that, I mean, you can look at it as just trying to articulate between your activities and your outcomes. So it's a pathway that you can think about for your activities to outcome. But before then, let's think about what's included in starting a project or a program. This you would have done in the project management course or project management cycle, but we can just briefly quickly go through it. Most projects and programs start with defining problems, right? And in problems, in defining problems, you have the problem, what we call the main problem itself, which could be yes, race cases are increasing, women are getting trafficked, children cannot read and write properly, women are not getting speedy access to justice, their corrupt practices are increasing during procurement practices. These are all problems, but you can think those are main problems, and then you now think about the root cause of it. So there's always a root cause to it, and in that you ask why. So why is rape increasing? Why is corruption increasing during procurement? Why are children not learning how to read and write effectively? You keep asking yourself why, and this constitutes all the root cause of the problem itself. Then the problem also has its consequence as well, and we can quickly take a look at what I mean by this. But before then, would be important to think about the problem you are tackling currently. So if it's rape, for example, rape cases are increasing, right? You have an objective to that, like you need to reduce rape cases that are happening in maybe Lagos State or Kano State. So that's an object that might look like an objective also, because and the main problem itself. So let's take a look at, yes, I mean, welcome to our Jamboard, where which we'll be using to, yeah, I mean, do a little bit of things. So I can quickly use a sticky note and say that yes, rape cases are increasing, right? That's a problem. Just using this as an example, right? And trying to form a problem tree. And this is how we tend to look at problems, as it were. So the rape cases. So why are rape cases increasing, right? Oh, okay. Maybe let's take a look at it. No law to protect. I mean, people from the legal perspective. Oh, no law to protect rape victims, right? And I can pull this in green, and that's one. What other things? People from the social sciences might say, oh, parents do not talk about abuses with girl child, right? Some people might say the boy child as well. So I mean, what other things? Yes, social abuse. So social abuse not taught in schools. That's one. What other one? Yeah, no law to shame abusers, right? Also, to shame or prosecute abusers. So, I mean, rapists, that's what I mean. Could also be that yeah, I mean, you could think about so many root cause of this. A woman seen as weaklings in a way. I mean, just think about different ways. I mean, different people have different perspective, and they will tell you that. So this is just one way, and I put them here. All this what you might refer to as. So I mean, think about it. So this is where you have save that. If you do not know how to use the Jamboard, I mean, we would have told you how to do this. Then I label this. Let me come here, use the text box, put it as root cause, right? So this is like a tree. So it's like a tree, and which has a root cause. Then You also have, let me duplicate it. This is where you have the main problem. And you have just on top of, so you have the roots, you have the trunk, and you have the branches on the top. So what are the consequences of rape cases increasing? We'll go to sticky note again and use another color. Let's use the orange color, or yeah, let's use the orange color. Then we think about, yes, I mean, what, yeah, maybe in some places you have reduced girl child in school. I mean, where you have increasing rate of rape cases in, then you can, yeah, negative attitudes towards woman or the girl child, whichever one. I mean, this is always done with a group of people. So I mean, if you're using the participatory approach, it means that you need all your stakeholders to discuss this, right? So limited sources amongst girl child, right? Because that's what rape does for you. For people, when you have rape, think about it in some places in India where you have lots of rape cases. Talk about vulnerability as well, as a consequence of increase in rape cases. Also poor performance, yeah, reduced confidence, right? Or limited confidence. And I'm sure, I mean, you can think about also, I mean, increased crime, because that's also what it means. There's so many consequences you can think about at that point. So I'm going to put this. So these are like our so these are the consequences of this problem persisting. I'll duplicate this, and so we have consequences. Let me see, I can, if you take that. Yeah, I mean, so this is like this is how you put together a problem tree, and from here are your project objectives. Yeah, your objective is to yeah, I mean, might be to reduce rape cases, right? This might be your goal, which is a general statement: reduce cases of rape all around the world, or in Nigeria, for example. So you can think about it. Also think about several other problems: women not getting access to speedy justice. Then think about the root causes. Why are they not getting uh, access to speedy justice? Or um, the magistrates, we have few magistrates. There's no motivation in the court system. Um, yeah, the police, which is the gateway, are not well equipped or trained on the law that gives women access to speedy justice. Um, uh, and that you can think about the consequences for women not getting access to justice. Could be some of this as well. I mean, they become vulnerable. There's limited confidence because they know they won't get quick justice. I mean, the society looks down to them, and also that it can resort to, yeah, more rape cases because they know, so that's like interconnected in a way, right? If you have a problem which is, yeah, corruption, increase in corruption, corrupt practices during procurement, yeah, what is causing that? Why is that happening? Um, yeah, the uh, the procurement law is not being implemented well. Why is it not being implemented? Or the law is not distributed all around to the ministry, department, and agencies. Um, yeah, the society do not talk about corrupt practices when small children are young. They are not taught in school. So different perspective. Then what does that mean in terms of consequence? Yes, revenue loss to the government. That is what it means. Um, um, Country outlook is on tackling corruption is reduced. So you think about so many cons, and this is what you can term as, yes, how to put together a problem um, tree or problem statement for your program. You should have done this in your project management. So let us move forward. Then you think about the goal. So what's a project goal, right? If we look at this, remember I said from here you can actually coin from the main problem, you can coin your goal and also your objectives. Reduction in reduction in rape cases by 2020, by 2022, a 2 years program. Then you can now think of objectives, which also answer the question how do you now reduce rape cases by 2020 becomes your objectives. Um, Increasing sensitization and awareness uh, amongst women, or increasing sensitization amongst youths that are male, because yes, male, it's mostly common anyways. It's not like the male child is not also being raped, but not necessarily common. You could think about that goal as general long term, which your projects will not necessarily be able to address. So, providing access to water for every person in a particular location or country. Your own project as civil society organization might not be able to meet that. It will only contribute to it. So reducing poverty in Kano by 2015, or Lagos, or think about it. Those are long-term goals which your project might not necessarily be able um, to achieve, and is related always to impact statements, right? Um, so impact statement is a change in the whole society, and it is related to the goals. Yeah, um, poverty reduction, speedy justice to human rights violators, quality education for all, um, access to free health care for all. Think about those goals, and I do say think about it as something related to the Sustainable Development Goals. So all those goals are what we refer to as goal statements, and they are related. It is from there you take your impact statement as well. So objectives, like I said, project objectives will allow you to address um, how you would achieve your goal statement. So we're going to reduce poverty in Kano by 2015. How are we going to do that? You now have your project objectives. Might be 1, 2, 3, 4. And this, an example is, yes, we will increase the income levels of women entrepreneurs um, in Kano State by 5% before 2030, right? So it is smart. It's talking about income levels. It is measurable. Yes, 5%. within your program. It is achievable because it has, yeah, I mean, you already know, I just want to increase, so it means I'll have a baseline and I'm going to have an end line. It is realistic. So in terms of percentage, so think about it every time um, in your project. So not to put 20%, for example, there, and that becomes a problem, right? When you say 20% increase or 50% or 100%, you need to think about that. So be conservative as much as possible. And I always advise 1-2% increase. I mean, it's a change on its own in your program, and you can learn about many things from it. Also makes it realistic as well. Women entrepreneurs, so your target audience, you already know them, right? That makes it, and it's timely. It's, we're saying in 2030. Oh, think about the time your program has or your project has for you to reach it, or your organization. So that is what program project objectives is all about. um, Remember, in module one, you have done your program, you've identified program, you've identified goal, and you've identified the objectives, and we're responding to that, and then that means that yes, we're learning how to also put together our objectives and also write our goals as well. So project objectives, you can think about a whole lot of it in a program or in a project as well. Then think about the outcome statements. These are all, so what we're talking about is what is included in your theory of change, right? Impact is one, outcome is another one, which is what beneficiaries achieve as a result of services provided to them. So this is the real change, right? This is the real change that we're talking about, that might have happened based on the project or the program that you have delivered to those community or to those group of people, or as well. So this change is measured within your beneficiaries. So let's go to this. Our rape cases are increasing, assuming in your program, I mean, you have different groups, and you're focused in 2 local governments, for example. So you have sensitization workshops that are targeted at youth that are male and youth that are female, for example, and you design manual, you design sensitization manual, you designed your information, education, communication materials, and also trainings as well for male and women. You think about your outcome as, oh, okay, when the male, for example, when they now see women as, yes, as someone who is also within their own scope, within the same level, at the same level as well. So you look at this root cause, women are seen as weaklings. You might decide to pick this as, yes, yeah, I want to make sure that this male youth now see women as contemporary, as someone that they develop together with, as partners and not as weaklings as well. So you might think about that as an outcome. So when their behavior changes to women, so the outcome stage is always about the behavior change, the perception change, the change that you see. So think about, yes, children are now influential protectors amongst peers, or male are now influential protectors to women. Police now recognizing suspect rights to a witness, to statement documentation. For example, in an increasing women access to justice, and you'll find that there's a problem that police do not necessarily recognize. They do not always recognize women's right to a witness. But I mean, when your program started, you want to be able to cause that change in which police will now recognize women's rights to witness. So think about that as so the change. So outcome statement is about the change that you want to see in your beneficiaries. Um, Another example would be, yes, if your program focuses on, yeah, improving livelihoods amongst young women that are sexually abused or exploited or trafficked. um, think about, oh, if so, I mean, you have women in your group as your beneficiary groups, and you have been able to, yeah, provide funding to them. You have been able to provide um, therapy sessions with them. You have been able to do some trainings with them on how they can improve their livelihoods. An outcome statement will be, yes, when um, they now have increased livelihood, when they can now live on their own, when they can now be able to, for example, be able to speak about people on trafficking, the bad side of trafficking, and all to other people or to other family members. So you can think about that as the outcome. It is always the change that you see in your beneficiaries that they are now carry on in your program as well. Outputs are, yes, immediate result from your activities, and it is within your management control because um, all what you do as an activity is for would would now be able, during the output result chain, will be something that you can quickly be able um, to time or deduce as a change or what you have carried out in your project, in your project. So you think about it in terms of, yes, the communities you have reached, the community health workers that has been trained, women that has learned how to now hold their leaders accountable, um, schools that have now learned how to be able to admit children with disabilities, um, yeah, callers to your radio program, provision of the services that you have rendered in homes. I mean, output statements are all about those immediate changes you can that you can quickly see in terms of reach, in terms of learnings that have changed, and all. So that's what output is, and activities are, yes, your work plans in order to achieve this output. So think about rallies, sensitization, workshops, seminars, um, community mobilizations, town hall meetings, advocacy meetings to government agencies, and all. So this forms all your activities as well. Then you have the input, and input are those things you design for your programs, right? Like develop for your programs, in terms of IEC materials, stickers, human resources that you've recruited for a particular program, the toolkits, the learning kits that you've developed, also the money that you've put in inside a program. All these are what we refer to as inputs. So before I move further, all the components of your theory of change starts from your, yeah, I will say your impact, but that's at the larger scope, at the larger level. Um, um, so the change you want within the society. Yes, you want poverty to reduce in the society. You want everybody to have access to water. You want everybody to have access to free health care. You want everybody um, to have improved income, right? This, you want the environment to become sustainable. They are larger goals, larger statements. You can put it in your theory of change, but more normally for civil society organization, it starts from here, your outcome state. What has changed in the behavior of your beneficiaries, of those that participated in your programs, for example, your workshops, your seminars, those that received your IEC materials, your toolkits, your posters. That's what is an outcome, the changes in their own lives. Uh, then we talk about the output, which are immediate results. Yes, you remember your beneficiaries, they've attended your workshop. What have they learned? Um, um, what do they now have access to that was not there before? The toolkits, the provisions that you make for them becomes the output um, for your program, and this is mostly important for your project objectives, because as civil society, in the context of civil society work, most times your projects are in 1 year, 1.5 year, 2 years, and your result stays within the scope of the output. Then you have your activities, which you do as well. Think about so many activities that you do. Then also the impact, which are things you as program implementer design or construct for your program to be in place. We've talked about this before when you were looking at problems and how to coin your statements. So, I mean, once you see that this is your problem, then think about how you will coin um, the outcome for that problem. So, married when women are abused by their husband might be a problem. So, how do I my program so how do I coin the goal of my project? More women have access to reporting mechanism of domestic abuse. So think about all this. I will not go through this because we have looked at it. So let's take a look at the component of a TOS of a theory of change. There are two versions of it. Um, but I will focus on this because yes, you have your input. So the theory of change shows the connection, like we said, the connection between your activities and the impact that has occurred, right? So um, look at this as input and activity in some literature or text. This can be merged together, right? Your input and your activities. So input could be yes, funding, toolkits, things you've designed. Activities could be yes, sensitization workshops, training, rallies, petitions. Then it now leads to that will now lead to, oh, okay, um, yeah, women learning the more, having to learn the more, women having access to how to use the law, um, farmers having access to seedlings. Um, so then that leads to, oh, your outcome, right? So this box actually remains our outcome box. What I've done here is try to, at times you can have short-term and long-term outcomes. At times it could just be one. Yeah, I mean, you could just leave it as one outcome. So when farmers receive improved seedlings here, then what happens here? Farmers have increase in yield in the seedlings, or when farmers have learned how to properly plant their, for example, cocoa seedling, at this point it can lead to increase in yield in cocoa or in cocoa production, right? Or in their cocoa harvest. And that leads to what? Improved livelihoods or increased income, poverty alleviation at the impact stage. Let's go back to the example of, rape cases increasing. Now your input, a toolkit on how women can deal with rape cases, right? An activity, also another input could be a book or an handbook on how youth should see women in the context of abuse or violence. You now come to activity, training, of women groups, male groups, young people in school. Talk about sensitization, radio programs. Then what does that lead to in terms of output? Oh, okay, increase in knowledge by male by the male child, young male child, on how to relate with girls, on how to relate with women. Um, Women now have access to the policy documents that you've reduced, and they know how to report um, rape cases or intention for rape as well. Then that leads to an outcome, right? Could be change in behavior of the male young children within your program. Um, also could lead to, yes, increase in reporting, the reportage of rape cases. And what does that lead to? Yeah, strong justice system, peace and justice system, reduce violence, reduce crime as it concerns rape, um, as it is. So also you can think about a program that hopes to strengthen dialogue mechanisms, or strengthen health budget advocacy, or increase budget to health systems in a particular state. Yeah, your input could be, yes, a manual on the current budget for health systems. Then you talk about training of community-based organization. Activity could also be um, a visit, so advocacy visits to local government authorities, if it's focused on local government or government MDAs, as we know them. Then think about an output, increase knowledge about health budgeting, the amount that is available for health budgeting, how community-based organization can engage their local governments, um, and what does that lead to possibly? Yeah, increase participatory budgeting between the local government authority and the CBOs or the communities as well. And what does that lead to in terms of impact? Yes, we free health to all and all that. So that's samples of theory of change. And think about assumptions. So it also includes assumptions, which is why we say yes, it takes a look uh, at the consequences in which your program performed as well. So assumptions would then be that, oh, those your root causes, right? That, oh, it is because the male child do not have not been taught in school how to relate with the girl child. That is why we're having increase in rape cases. You need to put them here. So that means that's why you're providing that knowledge in schools, right? Um, so if it's the project that hopes to reduce corruption during public procurement, oh, maybe you think, oh, perhaps because the Procurement Act is not available to contractors or civil society organizations. Okay, because that's an assumption, right? We'll put it here, and because of that, we are designing a um, a simplified Public Procurement Act, or that the Act has some provisions that are not relevant anymore. That's our assumption. We will now, because of that, advocate for an amendment as part of our activity, or do rallies, sensitization for why the amendment is needed. Also think about risk as well. Some people put risk and assumptions together as well. So this is what the theory of change actually looks like. And don't forget, yes, I mean, you could see the connection between each of your activities. So, I mean, if this is supposed to be your organization theory of change at your impact stage, this normally looks at your vision. If related to your vision, it means that every activity that you do in your organization should result to your impact. So, for example, an organization that wants a vision where women have speedy access to justice, it means that all the input, different program activities must lead to that, right? But once you're evaluating yourself and you find out that, oh, there's a program activity that is not actually leading us to the vision, then you need to think about it and discuss it with the team in order for you to make decision. That's what this can also do. This theory of change model can also do for your organization. These are examples of theory of change as well that can be developed. So you see assumptions in here. This is the theory of change of accountability lab, right? So you can see all what they have as input: human capital, financial resources, information. Then that will lead to outputs, right? Um, um, and they have called their own intermediate outcomes, which is increase in knowledge. Communities are now changing, then it now leads to active and engaged citizens as impacts, right? So theirs of their own impact is, yeah, more inclusive and accountable societies, right? And they feel like, oh, this is what it's supposed to look like as an organization. This is what they think. Their own theory is that, oh, in terms of absorption, all communities and voices are equal. Individuals have ability to change institutions and systems, and uh, their team, their own team, lives by its values. And because of that, they will have these inputs, create relationships, make sure there's human capital, which is training within their own organization, and also there's their resources, and they added preconditions also. And that leads to, yes, outputs in terms of, yes, campaigns, collaborations, training feedbacks, and all. So think about it. So here is their own activities, and here they have the immediate results, and here the change in behavior. So there will be more coalitions among organizations, there will be more knowledge, and communities will start changing, and that will lead to um, this long-term outcome where citizens are now engaged. So that's their own theory of change. There are other examples as well of theory of change that you can look at. This is for a program which you will do also as you're learning. So you can take a look at some of this. This is also an organizational theory of change, which you could also do as well. And this is your Causal pathway, right? Um, so this makes it easier for you to be able, so from here, you can move to, so from your Causal pathway, developing this as a tabular format, you can then move to this. And that is what the learning task that you have is all about. So using the template provided in the classroom, you are supposed to construct your Causal pathway design and then develop a theory of change for your program. So what does that mean? First, you design a table that looks like this. Is a template, but it's already in the classroom. Let me go to, so this is how you see your classroom and your classwork, and you have module 2 learning task. Let's look at the task view assignment. So this is what the assignment is all about, right? Pick one of your programs you have identified. Yes, so you have identified a program in module 1. Pick it. Develop a Causal pathway for it using this template. We are talking about this template here. I just open it. So this is the template, right? And once you complete this template, you can then develop a pathway. That's what it means. I mean, you can develop your theory of change, which has different arrows um, in it. Don't forget, it has to be your own program, right? It has to be the program you're working on. And is there something missing here, which I'm not sure of? Yes. So you have result ID, and the description. Then you're supposed to put in your assumptions just underneath here. That so, for example, let's look at a particular program. As once you're done with this, it saves automatically. So just let me uh, state that at this moment. So let us think about a program that hopes to improve. So let's go to a Jamboard and put this in. Give a text box. Improve the livelihoods of let's say improve the livelihoods amongst young women, right, that are sexually abused, that have been sexually abused, exploited, and trafficked, right? Let's assume we're working on this. Yes, so in terms of, let's come back here, and so you can think about different activities that you can do in order for you to be able to improve the livelihoods among young women, right? You can think about different activities that you can do, but also to think about, yeah, I mean, we're not going to discuss the problem or the root cause here. You can think about the assumptions at first, or the problems, either of the two. So maybe reduce knowledge. That women do not have access to I call it winning knowledge anyways. Girl child are not taught in school how to become self-sustaining. For example, I'm only going to be using this as an example, right, for us to improve livelihoods among women that are trafficked or so you can add role as well. So let's say girl child are not informed about dangers of trafficking, right? I can also say that, let me insert one below. There are no legal repercussions for traffickers, right? Maybe, I mean, this might be all our assumptions, and you see that these assumptions also shows that, yeah, the problem, right? Why? So the problem that we discussed in our, so these root causes, right? Because they are the assumptions. So we now think about our activities and inputs. So don't forget, I will be putting our activities and input together. So we will do training for young women in, let's say, Lagos State. I'm just using Lagos State as an example. In fact, our program might just focus on one LGA or maybe three LGA in three LGAs in Lagos State, right? Develop regular migration toolkit, dangers of irregular migration toolkit or manual, whichever one you call it. Road sensitizations in the three LGAs. I mean, I would have thought like, oh, maybe it is in these three LGAs that women are mostly trafficked, abused, sexually harassed. So, I mean, you can continue to think about different ways, advocacy meetings to NAPTIP, that is the government agency that is responsible for trafficking, right? Because we also know there are no legal repercussions, maybe there is no law, we can say meetings with legislative committees in Lagos, right? That is to advocate for, yes, why there's a need for the law. Let me insert one above here, and so in a way I'm separating this, and I can make my sheet become colorful in some sense. Assumptions, activities, green. Then what are my outputs, right? I might just think about, put it here, before outputs. So women learn about dangers, right? Of irregular migration. Become aware of trafficking issues. Women become aware of important mechanisms when we assume that, oh, so we have girl child are not taught in schools here. You can also add an activity that decides to, teach. So school clubs, let me add it here. Set one above. So organize school clubs, right? Self-sustaining activities. So girl child become confident. How to be self-sustaining, right? You can even say more girl child. And don't forget all these those in your program, right? More women, more women. So we said this is in terms of reach and all that. So let's also think about, yeah, legislators. You remember we said this is a quick result, right? Acknowledges. Legislatures acknowledges legislature. So acknowledges need for law that protects women, right? And I mean, this is just been looking at an example. You can think about the VAP Act, right, which Nigeria has. So think about it in form of, so you have your outcomes, um, yeah, the law protecting women, reduced trafficking, right? Um, so let's not lose sight of improved livelihoods, which is the main objective. Self-sustaining, yes. I'll change this to women because improved livelihoods means, yes, having more income, right? More women. So this leads to, let's add another one. I mean, these are all that you can, but I mean, you can reduce all this for the scope of the work that you do, and that's why you have result ID. Okay, what I've done is actually put, so in here, Control C. So this is how you're supposed to report this. Control V, and remove all this from here. Then we have this, Control C. We have this in here. Boom. Then let's take out all this. So your table is becoming filled already. This is just being hypothetical, but I know this program is being run by an organization in Nigeria anyways, so but this is what the task is all about, the learning task is all about. As you go up the ladder, you this reduces, right? So let's get things good. So this is what we wanted: outcome stage, output stage. Let me give it another color. and the impact stage, which is, yeah, I mean, think about it. That's so dun dun dun. So this is just an example. Okay, so when there's a law protecting women, they improve livelihoods for women, reduce trafficking. Yeah, I mean this can lead to I mean it depends on what you're trying to think about. Um, Peace and justice for women, right? So this is what you're supposed to do in your task. What you now need to do is now once you're done with this, you can now, I think there's a space for, let me insert one. You're supposed to put insert one, your project objective. Boom. So let's go to our Jamboard and we can copy this. Let's see. Let's just put it here. Anyways, improved livelihood amongst women, or you can say young women, so which means wherever you have women sexually abused, exploited, or trafficked. So what this means might be that our target law protecting exploited women, you can think about that, but also that it can be generally women, but all this more exploited. So you need to think about this more exploited or sexually abused women. So because it's targeted already. Um, so more exploited women. Let's leave this as small girl child because it is assumed that this is one of the root, right? Um, so this is what your what your causal pathway looks like. One thing you can do is give each one of them so um, an ID A1.1, or you say you can actually say A1.0. Let me just do this, A1.0, and I'll tell you why this is A 2.0, right? Let's see if it will drag down. And now, what can we do? Okay, we can do this, right? So when it comes here, I take this as output, right? OT. So think about which of these leads to legislature acknowledges. So that's meeting with legislatives and this too, right? So you need to think about which one leads to which one, and the way you can. So that's why I need to, let me separate this very well. A 2.0, A 3.0, A 3, A 4.0, A 5.0. You can, so A 5.1. So you can label this as OT 1.0, OT 1.2.0 as well, and all that. So, but I mean, that's just for labeling sake of this. But you can see that this does not show a connection, right? Which your theory of change can then now do for you by just putting in your statements, right? Activities, meeting with legislative committees. For example, and I'm just going to use this as an example. Let's save that. Advocacy meetings to NAPTIP. Then I save. This is part of my part. So the second question, I'm just trying to answer the second question, and I will use this as an example. So what does this lead to in terms of, so let me use, before I come there, let me just go to my output. Legislature acknowledges need for law that protects women. I put it, let me use another. So need for law that protects women, right? Save. I'm just using this as an example. Then we have law protecting women at the outcome stage, right? Let me use blue. So, bam, and so at this stage, let me come here, peace and justice for all women. Yours might be long because you need lots of activities, right? Let's see how creative you can be, and let's use orange. Have I used orange before? Use yellow. Proved livelihoods. Exploited women. Save. So this comes here, and so this is what you're supposed to do as part of. So these are your activities. Let's duplicate this, duplicate, and you have your output. Then we can duplicate this as well, and you have your outcome. Then you have your impact, right? So this just show one part of. You will need to continue. Then I suggest you have your, let's see, remaining your, let's have this here, closer here, so that you can have your assumptions, duplicate, and have your assumptions. We will be looking out for the most creative organization in terms of putting this their theory of change for the program together. Let's put there. Don't forget, if you have any comments, suggestions, put it in the comment box of the classroom. So we have the assumption. So you can then put all the assumptions that we have here on this line. So for example, here's the sticky notes. No legal repercussions for traffickers, exploiters, or abusers, right? So I save. I've just used just one. Don't forget, we have a long list in our, you can see it here, right? You need to fill this. And don't forget, since you need to fill this with your team, right? And your other colleague from your team and your team members. So what I can do with this is, if you're creative enough, you can use your pen, or there's an arrow button in here that you can use. So let's do this. This leads to this, right? Duplicate. I can rotate. Also feel free to use any tool that you feel you're comfortable with to do this. So you can see, so with this you can show the connection, right? I've just used as an example, yours will have a whole, so I mean, all the activities that you have in here should be, but I just encourage us, I would just advise you stick to 4 activities, that's not 4 to 5, because this is just for training purposes. So, and you can now show the linkages using your Jamboard. So, yeah, so this is don't yeah, I mean, you can try this out. So this is your the second question that you've answered. Don't forget there are 2 questions. Develop a cursor pathway, that you can do by clicking on this sheet, which is a template, and that is what you have in here already. The second question is to now develop the mind map, which is the theory of change showing the connections. That has been done in here. You can then, what you can do, because I've used the Jamboard anyways, let's see what I can do with this is to save it as, let me see, I should be able to, yeah, so on this just button I could have my PDF document, so I can download it as a PDF, and once I do that, yeah, I mean, if you're going to use a Jamboard, you can use Word as well to do this. Once you do that and download as PDF, you can just add it here and submit. Yes, once you click on, so let me just try and do this, download as PDF. So it downloads automatically in here, it's there already. You can come to here. Don't forget the first question automatically saves, so this is already saved. I can add what I just did as a file. Let's see. It should be, so this is it, EU training Jamboard, and I'm already uploading it. Then it uploads. Once you're done, so once you're done, you just click on turn in. So you just turn it in, and it means you've submitted your assignment, the 2, because this is already saved automatically. It is already here. Then I can turn in. So it's telling me, oh, I have this to turn in your work. And don't forget, Sunday is the day you're supposed to turn this in by 11:59 p.m. So I turn it in. It will tell me yes, so it's submitted already. You can see on submit. So that's what the task is all about. Creating your cursor pathway here, and also your theory of change in this manner. That's a sample and abridged format. So we expect you to be able to do that as the learning task in here. Some references about theory of change, cursor pathway, please feel free to use, and some useful website as well. I hope this has been so useful for us. Don't forget, if you have questions, comments, please feel free to post it inside your classroom. So let's go back to a slide. Yes, so you've understood what theory of change is, what it is used for, the way we use input, activities, output, outcomes, and impacts. And also you have been able to design and develop your cursor pathway and your theory of change. We hope this is useful to you, and please Feel free, do not forget to make comment, ask questions about this. We'll see you in module 3. But for now, all the best in your learning task and further conversations. My name is Oludotun Babayemi.